great working relationship. The one thing I could see is working behind the scenes. Maybe you ask him, hey, is there a young up-and-coming coach that you would recommend for an interview? I think that could potentially happen. And I agree with Charlie here. I think that is something that could possibly happen as well. Now, maybe Tomlin's like, I don't want to be a part of it at all. You guys find the next head coach on your own. But I'm sure, Tomlin has some young coaches in mind that, he thinks would be a good fit here in Pittsburgh, because he obviously knows, what the environment is, what it's all about here in Pittsburgh. And I do think he would have some ideas as to which guys the team should be giving a look to. And, 4 ideas of guys that I think would be on his short list, and the list that he would give to the team. Brian Flores, obviously, he was a big-time assistant here in 2022. I know for a fact Tomlin really respects Flores as a defensive mind. Also, Raheem Morris, like his best friend. He just got fired as a head coach in Atlanta. I'm sure he would recommend him as well. Robert Saleh is another guy that's been in the league, kind of a younger head coaching option, defensive side of the ball. I think he would probably recommend him. And then Jeff Hafley, the current Packers defensive coordinator. We're actually going to talk about Hafley here in our second portion of the show today, but Hafley actually recruited his son, Dino, to play at Boston College. So there's actually a little bit of a relationship there between Hafley and Tomlin that I think would lead to potentially Coach T recommending him to be the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, if you're worrying too much at home, I know there's a lot of Steelers fans that are like, I want the exact opposite of Mike Tomlin. I don't want him anywhere near or anyone that's been associated with Mike Tomlin to be a part of this team. But it's like, don't worry, guys. He's not going to be making the final call. At the very most, I'm guessing he's going to give the team a list of guys that he thinks would be worth the while of an interview or something like that. But Tomlin is not going to be a part of the interview process. He's not going to be making the final decision or anything like that. That's going to come down to team owner and president Art Rooney II, and then, of course, the GM Omar Khan. If Tomlin is involved in this process at all, it's just pointing the team in the direction of some coaches that he really respects. So coming up here on Steelers Talk, I'm going to be breaking down our 3 new head coach interviewees that we're going to be interviewing here over the next couple days and weeks. But before we get into the rest of today's show, let's have a word from our sponsor today, where you guys can go check out our website right now. Go chatsports.com/pitrope to get a Pittsburgh Steelers rope hat. I'm actually wearing our own channel rope hat right here. But if you guys want to get something similar here from our website, you guys can go chatsports.com/pitrope to make it happen today. Really do appreciate all of your guys' support. And every time you click that link down there in the comments and description of today's show with chatsports.com/pitrope and you make a purchase, part of the proceeds go back to us here at Steelers Talk. So if you're in need of a new hat to ring in 2026 to show your support for the Pittsburgh Steelers, this one's a pretty cool one that I recommend for you guys. Go chatsports.com/pitrope to get this rope hat in your collection today. So the 3 new interviewees for the Pittsburgh Steelers head coaching job that we learned of today. Jeff Hafley, the Packers defensive coordinator, a very busy man. He is going to be interviewing with a lot of teams here over the next several days and weeks. Ejiro Evero, the Panthers defensive coordinator, and then not Clint Kubiak, Clay Kubiak, the offensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers. That's an F Ponzi in the chat. It's an understandable mistake because Clint Kubiak is one of the top candidates for head coaching jobs around the league. But no, it is Clay Kubiak that is getting the head coaching interview here in Pittsburgh. We'll talk about that later here. But we'll start at the top of the list here with Jeff Hafley, who's 46 years old. He's currently the Packers defensive coordinator. He used to be the head coach in Boston College from 2020 through 2023. He eventually left Boston College to go back to the NFL in Green Bay. And he runs a Saleh-style, 4-2 style defense. It is a modern defense with a lot of quarters and a lot of palms and cover 6 and, all these different match coverages that you see across the National Football League. He runs this style of system, and, there's some creative blitz packages. He used Micah Parsons in some very creative ways this year before he ended up getting injured, and Hafley is a very popular candidate, man. He is interviewing with a whopping 6 teams for their head coaching vacancies this offseason, including the Pittsburgh Steelers, but he's also interviewing for the Miami Dolphins job. I believe he's actually one of the favorites to land the Miami Dolphins job at this point. He's also interviewing with Atlanta, Tennessee, Arizona, and Las Vegas. So if the Steelers want Hafley, they do have some competition, but I would say out of the jobs that are on screen right now, I think if I'm Hafley, I probably want the Steelers job more than I want any other job on the list currently. But my question when it comes to Hafley is who would he get as his OC? Because he is now inside, the Sean McVay kind of circle there in Green Bay because Matt LaFleur is the head coach there. And obviously, there's some, McVay-style people on the offensive side of the ball there on the coaching staff with the Green Bay Packers. Now, the two guys that I would say are probably the most likely OCs if Hafley comes in as the new head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers would probably be the current OC in Green Bay that doesn't call plays under Matt LaFleur. That's Adam Stenavich. The reason why he'd come here is because he would have the opportunity to call plays. And then Luke Getsy, who's currently an offensive assistant. He's been working with Matt LaFleur in Green Bay many times. He went to Chicago to work with Justin Fields, and it just didn't work out. He got fired. He goes back to Green Bay. Getsy's actually a Pittsburgh native, so that I think he understands the importance of the job and stuff like that. And I think he got kind of a bad situation having to go work with Justin Fields, who's just not an NFL level quarterback. Maybe he would do better in his second stint as an offensive coordinator here in Pittsburgh under a Jeff Hafley regime. But then Ejiro Evero is going to be getting an interview here in Pittsburgh as well. He's the current Panthers defensive coordinator, 45 years old, so he is on the younger side still. He's another guy that runs a 4-2 split safety style of defense. He's kind of known for his ties to Vic Fangio, but he runs a little bit of a different, style defense. He runs a lot of cover 3. He does start with the 2 high safety shell, but he likes to rotate down into cover 3. He will call some cover 1. He actually runs a lot of cover 6. He doesn't run a lot of true quarters, but he does run, what would be considered a modern NFL defense. I think he's got some really cool and exotic blitz packages that he pairs with that match coverage as well. So Evero's been one of the guys I've kept my eye on for a while now. Now, obviously, Carolina's defense hasn't had a ton of talent over the last, several years, but I think he's made the most of that lack of talent, and he has, built a system there in Carolina that helped them make the playoffs this year, right? So, I think that Evero's somebody that you can consider, especially because he has a lot of connections to the Sean McVay tree. Obviously, Dave Canales, the current head coach there in Carolina, is a branch of the Sean McVay tree. And, Evero himself actually worked for the Rams for many years. He was on the staff there as their DB coach when they won the Super Bowl back in 2021. And because of that, he's got connections to a lot of available offensive coordinator candidates for the Pittsburgh Steelers to consider. Evero was close with Wes Phillips, who's currently the Minnesota Vikings offensive coordinator under Kevin O'Connell. He worked in Los Angeles with Evero during that championship season. He would be an option. He doesn't call plays in Minnesota right now. He would in Pittsburgh. Mike LaFleur, the current OC there in Los Angeles, might be looking for an opportunity to call plays as well. Brad Idzik, the current OC in Carolina, once again, doesn't call plays, but he's viewed as an up-and-coming offensive mind. Zach Robinson was a big-time OC candidate a couple years ago, ended up joining forces with Raheem Morris, another former Rams guy in Atlanta. He's now available as well. And then Thomas Brown, who was the assistant head coach for Sean McVay at the time, also the running backs coach. He's now the tight ends coach and the pass game coordinator in New England. He's been very highly touted by some in NFL circles and actually got a couple of play calling opportunities already. So I would expect one of these 5 men to be involved with Ejiro Evero if he gets hired as the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But now we move over to Clay Kubiak here, who is the 37-year-old current offensive coordinator under Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. Obviously, he's the son of Super Bowl winning head coach Gary Kubiak and the brother of Seattle Seahawks offensive coordinator and very popular head coaching candidate. I guess not for the Steelers, at least not right now, but Clint Kubiak as well. So, he does not call plays under head coach Kyle Shanahan right now. So he would be somebody that's relatively new to offensive play calling if he comes as the new head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I think it's very interesting that the Pittsburgh Steelers requested Clay Kubiak for a head coaching interview, but at least not yet Clint Kubiak. You know, Clint's the one that's getting a lot of the head coaching buzz. In fact, right now he's considered the favorite to land the Atlanta Falcons job as we currently stand here today. So the fact that the Steelers are, at least for now, foregoing interviewing Clint Kubiak, but they are interviewing Clay Kubiak is quite interesting. Now, why would they do that? Well, this makes me think that the offensive guys that the Steelers are interviewing, and right now there's only two, these guys are being interviewed because, you know, if they knock our socks off, sure, there's always a chance that they could be, you know, the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, but we're really, you know, interviewing these guys to be the next offensive coordinator of the Pittsburgh Steelers because they want to bring in a McVay or Shanahan-style offense, and they view these guys as potential OCs for whatever defensive-minded head coach they end up bringing in. And the two guys that they have interview requests in for that are offensive-minded right now are very young, and, you know, they're almost more in the offensive coordinator conversation right now. Nate Scheelhaase has never called plays at the NFL level. He's the pass game coordinator for the Rams. And then Clay Kubiak is another guy in this kind of world of Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, that's not calling plays. And, you know, usually the progression goes, you know, you go from, you know, offensive coordinator for them, and then you go into a place where you can call plays. And then once you kind of prove to everybody that you can call plays, then you become a head coach, right? So the fact that these guys are more in the OC conversation right now, and the fact that you're not, you know, interviewing Clint Kubiak when you certainly could for your head coaching position tells me that the Steelers may be getting a little bit of a head on their offensive coordinator search by interviewing these guys early in the process. But it really does seem like, guys, that Pittsburgh wants a McVay or Shanahan-style offense. Art Rooney has been somebody that's been an admirer of Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan for a while. So I really think this is the right move. I mean, if you're going to be shifting offensive philosophies, I think following in the footsteps of McVay and Shanahan is the way to go. Most of the successful offenses in the National Football League have a system that is similar to McVay's or Shanahan's, so I think this is the correct decision to go with if you are the Pittsburgh Steelers and you're trying to set a new course on the offensive side of the ball. Speaking of McVay and Shanahan, guys, keep an eye on Matt LaFleur and his situation in Green Bay, because he has not come to terms on a new contract with the Green Bay Packers, and according to Adam Schefter, things are getting a little ugly in Green Bay right now. This is what Schefter had to say earlier today on Get Up. He says this is the next coach to watch right now. He and the Green Bay Packers have been discussing a new deal, but there have been disagreements over the length of the contract, over the money involved in the contract. I would expect this to come to a head at some point here by the end of this week, one way or another. Both sides would like to figure it out, and maybe they will, but it hasn't happened just yet. We'll see if they can get that done Thursday or Friday. So expect to get some final news on Matt LaFleur and his future in Green Bay by the end of the week. And if he ends up leaving Green Bay, I think that he would be on the short list for the Pittsburgh Steelers without a question, as he should be. He's got one of the highest win percentages of any head coach in the National Football League right now. But we can take a look at the updated head coach interview list. Chris Shula, Nate Scheelhaase, Anthony Weaver, Jesse Minter, Brian Flores, Jeff Hafley, Ajiro Evero, and Clay Kubiak are all slated to interview for the head coaching position of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, outside of the two offensive guys that we talked about that are really more in the offensive coordinator conversation, all six of the other coaches are defensive-minded. So to me, guys, it certainly seems like the Steelers are leaning towards bringing in a defensive-minded head coach, as they have for their first three head coaching hires with Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and then, of course, Mike Tomlin. It's kind of the mold of the Pittsburgh Steelers. We have a lot of really high-priced, veteran talent on defense, and I think right now the focus is getting the most out of those guys, and then, getting somebody with connections to the Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan offensive coaching tree to be the OC. I think that's probably the way the Steelers are leaning at this point. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comments section. Does Pittsburgh need to hire an offensive-minded head coach? Give me a yes or a no down there in the comments section. I know a lot of people are really in on, Pittsburgh needing to get an offensive guy. Defensive coaches are not modern or whatever. But let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Give me your opinion on this, because it certainly seems like the Pittsburgh Steelers are once again heading in a direction where they're going to hire a defensive-minded head coach. Now, yesterday, the New York Giants announced that they are going to be hiring John Harbaugh as their next head coach. Now, you might be saying, Jack, why are we talking about this on today's show? He's going to be in the NFC. It's not going to affect the Steelers at all. Well, I actually think this affects the Steelers slightly in terms of their head coaching search because Todd Monken is expected to be the OC there in New York, and that's good for them, man. I think Monken's a really good fit with second-year quarterback now, Jackson Dart, and getting the most out of him and, helping his development at the NFL level. That's all good and great. But Monken would have been my choice at OC for Pittsburgh if the Steelers would be hiring Jesse Minter as their next head coach. And, Jesse Minter, he's one of these guys that they're interviewing that doesn't have connections to the Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan coaching trees and the John Harbaugh circle and the Jim Harbaugh circle right now, which doesn't have a whole lot of high-end offensive coordinator talent within it right now. So you can always, poach somebody from the Shanahan tree or the McVay tree and hire Minter if you think he's the right leader for your team. But right now, the top guy that really is connected with Minter is like Greg Roman. And Greg Roman absolutely sucks. He's been, one of the most milquetoast offensive coordinators in the NFL for years now. He's been fired by both Harbaugh brothers at this point, including this year after yet another disappointing performance in the playoffs. Just not a good offensive philosophy, in my opinion, from Greg Roman. He's not a great pass game coordinator. He's really good with the run game. He's not so great with the pass game. I would be out on Jesse Minter if Greg Roman was his solution at offensive coordinator. Now, that's going to be it for our coaching news here today, guys, but we actually put out a video earlier today here on Steelers Talk with some dark horse head coaching candidates to keep your eye on here as we continue on for the search for the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'll put the chip to that one in the top right of today's show, and that'll be it for today's program, guys. Make sure you let me know that you're a real one and made it to the end of the show today by typing your real one in all caps down there in the comment section. We want to show some love to you guys down there in the comment section if you made it to the end of today's show. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. That's going to conclude today's coverage of the Pittsburgh Steelers coaching search here on Steelers Talk, at least for today. Tomorrow, we'll be back with more head coaching news for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So if you don't want to miss any of that, click that subscribe button. Until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.
The Pittsburgh Steelers 2025 season came to a screeching halt on Monday night, and now the biggest question in the Steel City isn't about the roster, it's about the man under center. After a definitive 30-6 wildcard loss to the Houston Texans, quarterback Aaron Rodgers is facing the same mental gymnastics that eventually led Tom Brady to hang it up for good. Appearing on The Herd at Fox Studio this week, Brady offered some incredibly candid insight into what Rodgers is likely feeling. The 7-time Super Bowl champion didn't sugarcoat how grueling those final miles of the NFL marathon truly are. Brady reflected on his own departure from the game, noting that while everyone loves the hype of the first 4 miles and the glory of the last 2, it's the middle 20 miles of preparation and body maintenance that test a player's soul. To me, it's a question of, do you want to make this commitment year-round? Brady told Colin Cowherd, because if you don't, well, then it's never going to turn out the way you want. Brady admitted his final season with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was a struggle, citing personal family issues and the sheer exhaustion of a 23-year career. He noted that while he had kids' games to get to, the 4-time MVP has a different path to navigate. If Monday was indeed the end, it wasn't the fairy tale Rodgers likely imagined when he joined Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. Against a relentless Texans defense, the Pittsburgh Steelers offense sputtered. Rodgers finished the game completing just 17 of 33 passes for 146 yards, with no touchdowns and a costly interception. He was sacked 4 times as the Steelers failed to find the end zone even once. Despite the ugly exit, Rodgers' regular season showed he still has the surgical traits Brady recently praised. He led the Steelers to a 10-7 record and an AFC North title, throwing for 322 yards and 24 touchdowns against only 7 interceptions. Now, the future of the future Hall of Famer is a coin flip. He is a free agent this offseason, and as Brady put it, only Aaron can decide if he wants to callous his body for one more run. The Pittsburgh Steelers' search for a new head coach has begun, with the team already requesting interviews with candidates in the wake of Mike Tomlin's resignation. The early trend among the Steelers' head coach candidates is all but one is a defensive minded coach, which follows the mold of the previous three head coaches the Steelers had. With that in mind, it makes sense for Yahoo Sports' Jory Epstein to predict that the Steelers will hire San Francisco 49ers defensive coordinator Robert Saleh as their next head coach. Here's Epstein's thoughts on her prediction. The Jets' tailspin since Robert Saleh's departure speaks to how he elevated the team in spite of significant organizational dysfunction. Epstein said, the Steelers' ownership stability will be refreshing for Saleh, who can point to how he motivated a top 5 Jets defense through the quarterback wilderness through which Pittsburgh is wandering. Add in Saleh masterminding a highly injured 49ers defense to overachieve this season, and Saleh will maintain the Steelers' tough, gritty identity. Saleh has not been among the Steelers' interviews thus far, but Pittsburgh is still very early in the process, so he could join the group of candidates at some point. Saleh has head coaching experience after spending 3+ years in the role with the New York Jets, where he compiled an abysmal 20-36 record. After striking out in New York, Saleh returned to San Francisco for his second stint as the team's defensive coordinator, and he's once again doing a fantastic job in the role. Granted, San Francisco doesn't sport an elite defense, but the unit has been far better than expected after losing key players like Nick Bosa and Fred Warner. Another attractive thing about Saleh is he could bring former Miami Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel with him. McDaniel and Saleh are connected after they were on the same staff under 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. McDaniel's stint in Miami ended badly, but he's still one of the more respected offensive minds in the NFL and would be just what the doctor ordered for a Pittsburgh offense that badly needs to modernize. Even if Saleh can't bring McDaniel with him, he would still be a strong hire for the Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers' search for a new head coach has begun, with the team already requesting interviews with candidates in the wake of Mike Tomlin's resignation. The early trend among the Steelers' head coach candidates is all but one is a defensive-minded coach, which follows the mold of the previous three head coaches the Steelers had.